For those of you I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Tammy Cadas-Lucy. I have the privilege of serving our alma mater as the alumni director. I'm class of 81 and graduate class of 1982. And I am thrilled to be coming to you from the Alumni House on campus, which is just really great to have a presence back on the shores of Lake Massasoit. We are thrilled this evening to be offering our first ever virtual career opportunity for our alumni. And before I turn it over to our esteemed panelists and moderator, Scott Dranka, grad class of 01 and certificate of advanced study in 04, who is also our career center director, I just need to make sure that everybody knows that this evening's program is being recorded and later on will be available on our website and on our social media. So with that, Scott, take it away, and everybody enjoy the evening, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's Career Advice During a Pandemic program that we're bringing to you. As Tammy just mentioned moments ago, I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Career Center here at the college, and I am happy to serve as your moderator for tonight's program. At this time, I'd like to introduce our 4 distinguished alumni who will be serving as our panel of experts tonight. I will introduce them by name, class year, and their place of employment. After I introduce all 4, I will then ask each of them to share a few words about themselves. Then after introductions are finished, I will review a few logistical pieces for tonight's program. So to start off, I'd like to introduce Peg Ferguson Boyd, class of 1995, who serves as a professor of management at the University of Rhode Island. Next, we have Justin Monell, class of 2016, who serves as the Director of Career Services at Elms College and also consultant and development specialist for Mannell Career Consulting Group. Next, we have Betsy Moquin, class of 1990, who serves as the Senior Director of Human Resources for Learning and Development at the YMCA of Central Massachusetts. And also tonight we have Justin Tishman, class of 2004, who serves as the Division Director for Robert Half. So let's start off with Peg Ferguson Boyd and have her share a few words about herself. Peg?
Thank you, Scott. It's such a pleasure to be with you all this evening. Quick little trivia is my first job out of Springfield College was working in the Career Center at Springfield College. I went on to do a lot of work in career development and internship coordination, held some leadership positions, decided to then move into the academic affairs side, was an assistant dean for the University of Rhode Island School of Business for 16 years, finished up my doctoral degree, and now I'm on faculty. So I come to you with a lot of different perspectives, and I'm hopefully going to share some interesting things about how specifically I think you can gear up your job search in this pandemic time. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Peg. Now we will turn it over to Justin Monell. Justin, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good evening, actually. I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation. I graduated in 2016 from the graduate program in higher education. I then decided to escape the winter and move to Florida for a couple of years where I served in different capacities in different functional areas of higher education. And that included the Office of Multicultural Affairs at the University of South Florida, Florida International University, where I was an academic advisor and career counselor. And most recently, I moved over from the other side of Massachusetts at Clark University, where I served as the Assistant Director of Career Development. And now I'm the Director of Career Services at Elms College. So super excited to connect and really paint the picture and assist everyone today.
Thank you so much, Justin. Betsy, please share a few words about yourself with everybody.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. You know, I'm sure like all of you, Springfield College has a special place in my heart, so I'm really thrilled to be here tonight chatting with all of you. You know, my time on Alden Street took a little bit of a detour because I was a junior when they broke ground on the townhouses, and we lived at the YMCA in downtown Springfield for a while. My career started in HR at an electronics company, and eventually I made my way to from living at the YMCA to working at a YMCA. And that's one of the beautiful things about my job is I get to connect with so many Springfield people because of that. Actually, when I interviewed for the job, it was a group interview. I think there were 6 people in the room, including our CEO at the time who interviewed me, and 5 of the 6 were Springfield graduates. So there definitely are some powerful networks out there. And I am also the mother of a DPT3. So I am still on campus on a regular basis and feel connected. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Betsy, so much. And Justin Tishman, please share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us this evening. So I started my career in a different path. I went down the nonprofit route and did crisis intervention. Then I was executive director of a teen center myself. Then I moved into law enforcement, actually, and I did that for high-profile juvenile crime for close to 9 years, and then decided that there was just a competitive piece that was missing to me. So I moved into the corporate world, moved over to Robert Half. I'm now division director of the finance and accounting team at Robert Half, basically doing recruiting and accounting for accounting and finance individuals, but we also focus across multiple industries. So I've kind of reinvented myself, and now I help others do the same in the corporate world.
Thank you so much, Justin, and thank you all for those great introductions. We really appreciate it. So now, before we begin the main portion of tonight's program, I would like to review some logistics for this evening. So as Tammy mentioned a few moments ago, this program is being recorded in its entirety in order to afford other students and alumni access to this program at a later date. So I will serve as the moderator throughout the duration of the evening, and I will present our questions over to our panelists. Due to the wealth of knowledge and expertise held by our panelists, please be advised that some of the questions will be answered by several of our panelists. However, the majority of the questions will likely have responses answered by 2 of the panelists. As the presentation is in webinar format, all participants except for the panelists and me have been muted. So therefore, if you have a question you would like to ask, simply use the question and answer feature in order to submit your question into the queue. We will do our absolute best, time permitting, to bring your questions forward, as participants also have the opportunity to provide questions upon registering for tonight's event. So this concludes all of the logistical details. So let's proceed forward with starting the main portion of our program. So the first question that we have here tonight is, during the pandemic, what is your best piece of advice for job seekers during this time?
I'll take the lead on that one, Scott. Is one of the things I always told students is no matter what, a typical job search takes about 6 months. And people don't really think about that. It's not like most people find their job instantly. So the pandemic has created an even greater challenge with that. With various different jobs all going remotely or downsizing, etc. So it's not your typical job search. It's certainly not your father's job search. And what you're really going to have to do is think about how you can be creative in tapping into these networks, these remote networks, such as LinkedIn, in order to maximize your visibility. If you haven't already, and I know if you're a recent grad you have because you had Scott as your director, you want to make sure you have your brand, right? Well, your typical brand, and that includes your resume and all of that. But more importantly, you have to create your brand in that visual context of LinkedIn. And so if you aren't actively in that environment, people don't know you exist. And there's a lot of different techniques that we can go into, and some future questions we'll tap into for that. But you really have to do that. And then if you have a particular company that you're really interested in, like you have a dream, you want to go work for XYZ organization, then you should be following them. You should be linked into any of their newsletters, their blogs. You should be following them. You should be checking their job boards in anything, way, shape, or form, so that you're really in the link of what's happening with that organization. But kind of backtracking to that network piece, so when you're connected to them in a LinkedIn environment, you should be kind of looking to see, do I know anybody else in this company? Is there a first or second link? How do I maximize those connections? Telling people around you who you're interested in, talking about it over the phone or through emails to people. Because if you can make any kind of connection, that will be really important to you. I think in summing up this particular pandemic, the key, without a doubt, is having patience in your job search, because it's not going to happen overnight. Having a plan of branding yourself, and then really tapping into those networks to do that. And keep in mind, employers are always looking for problem solvers, right? They're always looking for people who are flexible and who are adaptable and who have a positive attitude. And if you can show that in your virtual world and get people to endorse you in your LinkedIn with those types of concrete skill sets, that's going to go a long way.
Excellent advice, Peg. Does any other panelist have anything else that they'd like to share to this question?
Yeah, so in addition to what Peggy said, I think that having the ability to pivot with patience is going to be essential. So understanding, there's going to be potentially a lot of no's or potentially a lot of unread or unresponsive applications or emails, but keep going. That's a part of the job search process, and having an open mind is going to help with that as well.
Thank you so much, Justin. So our next question tonight is, how can job seekers utilize this time to help them stand out, such as on their resume or some type of online platform?
Yeah, I think that's an excuse me, an excellent question. The resume, I want to kill the myth of it has to be one page. Okay, if you have experience, put your experience on there. We want to know what the experience is. One thing I hate is looking at a resume full of accomplishments. That's great, and we love to hear about that, and that's more of a talking point. But what I find and what my clients find is not everyone's accomplishments at one company necessarily fits the narrative for another company or the other company's needs, so they don't always translate. So it's really trying to get that transferable data onto your resume that aligns with the job description, because if there's 3 bullet points about XYZ and you're talking about ABC, they're not going to see the alignment. And so many firms now are using these ATS systems. They're looking for keywords, and if there's not 5 keywords on your resume, a human doesn't even see that. Which I think connecting in these times with the recruiters is crucial, because they know how to get it into a human's hands. We're not going through a computer system. We're spending our day marketing to humans so that we can bypass human resources at times to talk to hiring managers and say, I think you should meet this person, and here's why. I'm personally representing them. I've met them, and this is what I know of them. And that is a great way to get your resume in front of someone. But again, it's really just thinking about looking at the job description, and does my resume read that way? And does it match what they're looking for? Because that's going to be a key tool. And then also, again, one page, please. You can put more than one page on there. If you've got the experience, please add the experience. How is anyone supposed to know? They can't guess. You're a stranger to them. So this is your open introduction. You want to be able to get in front of them and have that conversation. So that is my biggest advice on the resume is use a resume writer or talk to a recruiter or someone that you trust to kind of look things over, but don't be scared of a 2 or 3 page long resume. It is, people will take the time. I know we say there's a 6-second scan of resumes, but people will take the time to look through it if there's relevant information on there. If there's something to capture them to see, like, oh, my bullet point is X and they've got it right here. So I want to read more. I want to see more about this. In online platforms, be aggressive. Now is the time to be aggressive. I love LinkedIn. When I was looking to make a career change from law enforcement to the corporate world, no one was going to look at my resume. I had no experience in that world. So what did I do? I saw a job that I liked. I did my research. I found the person who posted the job, and I messaged them on LinkedIn, and I said, please don't look at my resume and my background. Have a conversation with me. Jump on a phone call. And that aggressiveness, yet the tact in which I went about it and explained why I wanted to speak to them, opened so many doors and got me, if it didn't get me the job or an interview, it got me someone who wanted to network with me and help me do that because they saw my passion and why I wanted to make the move. So don't be afraid. Be a little bit more aggressive right now. Go out there, use your network. Like Peg was saying, LinkedIn can be a powerful, powerful place. And you can back that by using sites like, of course now it's my mind's going to go blank, but a Glassdoor to do some research, but take everything with a grain of salt, because don't forget, most people go online that are angry to post messages and give reviews. So use it to do a little bit of research and get interview questions and all of that. But you want to learn about the culture and the company on your own. And you can do that by just a ton of networking and looking at LinkedIn. You'd be surprised at who you're connected with and how you know them, or who you know that knows them. And as it's simple as just taking a moment to write a quick message, right? It takes I know the personal touch isn't necessarily there, but a quick note on LinkedIn, people will read it. People will respond. You would be amazed by the response. And again, it's just that little bit of aggressiveness that I think makes a huge difference.
Thank you, Justin. And a question that just came into our queue matches this question somewhat. So I'm just going to add this next part to this and open it up to the panelists. What can students do to expand their resume at a time such as this in the pandemic?
So I'm going to jump in on that because it's about building your skill sets, right? So you have some downtime. LinkedIn has some badges that you can build. So reinventing yourself. Justin talked about when he changed over from law enforcement, right, to recruiting. I mean, you can reinvent yourself. You can take a quick human resources type of familiarity thing on LinkedIn and get a badge. You could take a Microsoft Excel certification and get a badge. You could take a diversity and understanding kind of thing and get a badge of being that. There's even some COVID type of logistic badges now. So, what do those do? Well, they familiarize yourself with a particular topic or skill set, and they let somebody know that you're aggressive, right? Justin said be aggressive, that you're doing something to increase your skills, to set yourself apart. You're not just graduated or out a year or changing jobs, unemployed. You're actually doing something to be aggressive about that. So that's a really great resource that's right out there.
And a little trick about LinkedIn, be open to new opportunities. Your employer cannot see that. So you can say that you're open to opportunities, and it lets recruiters and others know, internal recruiters and external recruiters know that you're open and you're looking, and you can say what you're open to and what you want to look for. And it will block your employer or anyone kind of connects you from your employee from knowing. So people get nervous to click that tab, but it's a safe thing to do. LinkedIn's got some good technology to protect you on that front.
Thank you, Peg, and thank you, Justin. Our next question tonight is, are there any job boards that you would recommend, especially ones that have been proven to be helpful since COVID-19 hit?
Yeah, so I'll jump in, Scott. So there, as you can imagine, there are many job boards out there, and depending on your field and industry, there'll be unique job boards for you. I think throughout this conversation, you'll pick up that essentially networking is going to be key to finding opportunities, because a large percentage of opportunities, whether that's a job or potential internship, is going to be in the hidden job market. So that is more so referred opportunities that are not necessarily posted yet or that are posted. So some unique websites that go on, I would say LinkedIn Jobs as one, and following the practice of reaching out to active recruiters, connecting with organizations, following them on LinkedIn, as well as some remote work job boards. So for example, let's workremotely.com. In addition, and piggybacking off of what was said previously, so the automated tracking system that scans documents to get in front of a human being, there's a website called jobscan.com that can help you align your resume with the actual job description and give you a percentage of how accurate and close to the job description that you're being. And it really allows you to understand not only are you essentially beating the robot, but you're hopefully getting in front of a human being.
Great advice. Anybody else want to add something to that?
There's, there's some other platforms, Handshake is a great way to do it for universities. Purple Briefcase. Purple Briefcase? I think it's Purple Briefcase.
Yep.
Yep.
And a few others like that. So quick Google searches too. I mean, listen, Google is amazing for everything, but it's also amazing in this sense. And there's so many different ways to get involved. And I think Justin's right in saying, also look specific to industry. Each industry has its own site, and you just got to dig a little bit deeper. Like LinkedIn's like the be all end all of everything, but then you've got, for, you know, even oddly enough, I needed to find a client needed an executive assistant that was certified organizer. And there is literally a site for certified organizers for recruiters to go to help them find opportunities. So, I mean, you can find anything, you know, out there. There's a ton of resources. A quick Google search and LinkedIn will connect you with everything.
Thank you to both of the Justins for those great answers. Our next question is, are job seekers likely to see a change in the application process moving forward due to the pandemic? And is the hiring process likely to be lengthier than normal?
Boy, Scott, you know, I think this patience is a key virtue in this time that we're in right now. So if I look just at our YMCA and kind of the things we've been going through during this process, you know, we did not, all of our exempt staff have remained intact for the, you know, since this started back in March. That said, they're not necessarily all on the property all the time. You know, we've had people who were on vacation. We have pretty strict rules about if you've traveled that you need to quarantine when you come back. So for example, you know, if you were looking to be a lifeguard for us this summer and the lifeguard had taken a vacation, you know, she might be working from home, but that's one fewer person at the branch to kind of just help with all of the other things. So the process absolutely has gotten dragged out a little bit, but that's not necessarily a sign that the organization is not doing well or that you should be a little nervous or concerned. I would say keep at it, just be patient, be polite. You know, it's just things might take a little bit longer than normal. And sometimes that can be a good sign too, because it means that they truly are busy and that's why they haven't had a chance to really reach back out to you. So, you know, just don't give up, just keep at it and, you know, just continue to do it in a polite way, send an email, make a phone call, and, you know, understand it just might take longer than usual. The need is still there if the job has been posted.
Absolutely. So Betsy, seeing that we are seeing things take a little bit longer in time, so what is the appropriate time frame for an applicant to follow up on their credential, on their application that they submitted?
You know, I think it might be surprising for people to hear this because, you know, you hear about these horrible unemployment numbers and, you know, so you assume that you know, we're being flooded with all of these applications. And in many cases, we're getting applications, but we're not necessarily seeing follow through from people. And some of that, you know, has naturally, I think, to do with the government, rightfully so, put some protections in place for people who were unemployed. So there were definitely, especially over the summer months, some incentives for you to stay on unemployment that wouldn't normally exist during this time period. And, you know, for some of our very entry level and our part-time positions, we've had a lot of no-shows for interviews. So they're filling out the application. So they're getting credit at unemployment that they're, you know, quote unquote, looking for a job. But then when it comes time to come in, that's not necessarily happening. And it's not necessarily just happening with the part-time kind of positions. I was talking to a peer at another YMCA who hires a lot of social workers. And she was having social workers, professional people, some with many, many years of experience who weren't, you know, following through on their interviews. So, you know, I would be happy if at any time someone followed up with me. You know, I don't think anyone in HR is ever going to get, yes, sometimes it can be crazy to try to return all these messages and keep up with the phone calls and things, but it shows me that you're genuinely interested. I think the cue I would take if you've already had an interview with someone would be if they haven't clearly told you what the time frame is going to be and when they intend to get back to you, try to get clarity on that before you finish the interview. And if for some reason you forget to do that and it just doesn't happen, then reach out to them. And if they don't have a response for you, you know, be clear, when would it be a good time for me to follow up with you again? You know, there are some companies that say, you know, they don't want that. So follow their, you know, and be respectful if that's what they have outlined in the process. Just understand that that's the way they operate. You know, I think the other thing that really can make you stand out, and we see very few of these nowadays, but send a handwritten thank you note after. If you are truly interested in this job, even for professional level positions, you know, you don't even necessarily always get an email. So an email is bare minimum. Send a handwritten thank you note and send it promptly. We had an applicant for a director level position many years ago, and he hand delivered all of his thank you cards. And that was a fabulous touch that you probably aren't going to be able to do right now during COVID, but you know, keep in touch with people, send a handwritten note, reiterate your interest in it. If you learn something new about the company or the job that impressed you, mention that in the note, and just continue to keep in touch. No one is going to be offended by your eagerness to work for their organization, because they're trying to sell you on the job just as much as you're trying to sell them that you're the ideal candidate.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So our next question is, how important do you consider online networking to be during a pandemic? And do you have any online networking platforms that you would recommend?
So I promise I don't work for them, but it's all going to circle back to LinkedIn at this time. I just think it's the most powerful platform at the moment, and it's the most utilized platform at the moment. And I think it's universal in nature, in the sense that anyone from the CEO of a firm and the hiring managers of a firm down to entry level employee coming in who just got the job. So I live my life both from a networking standpoint, a marketing standpoint, but also a recruiting standpoint on LinkedIn. So I would say, not just in a pandemic, but just in a job search in general, using those online platforms to your advantage, and a combination of both, because, you know, we always talk about LinkedIn as a way to connect with people, but company profiles on LinkedIn are excellent. There is a ton of information that you won't find on a website. Like, I have a client that I always send everyone to before they go in an interview and say, make sure you look at their LinkedIn profile. For whatever reason, they just have great inside information on the LinkedIn profile that's not there on the website. And it might be just, you know, maybe they think their competitors aren't going to look at their website or the LinkedIn as much. I don't know what it is, but you can find out newest and latest trends and deals and things that these companies are doing or getting involved in, because LinkedIn is almost another way to advertise for free for some of these firms. So you can find out what their new initiatives are, or what do they believe in and what's going on, or individuals are putting out information because there was an internal email that came out and they're sharing it with the masses. So use not only just the individual piece to it, but definitely look at company profiles and just dig a little bit deeper, and use the trainers and look at everything they're seeing, and watch the videos and everything that you can find through LinkedIn and through the company profiles to just get that information, get that competitive edge. And again, Glassdoor is a great place. You just have to take certain things with a grain of salt, because individuals are not always happy, and it's driven by individuals. It's everyone uses ways to get around town, and it's built to be used by other users. That's how Glassdoor is it's other users kind of drive the train, but there's really great information on there that you can kind of start to piecemeal and put together your strategy almost, or what to do, or how to figure out how to get in the door, how to have that conversation, especially in times like this when you can't knock on a door anymore. You have to do everything virtually and become more comfortable in this setting. But also because the onboarding process is going to be virtual. Day one is potentially going to be virtual. So the more you're comfortable doing these things online and learning about them, the more you're going to be comfortable day one bringing that to a new opportunity, because you're using your past skill set and bringing it forward and using new knowledge as well to really just be a well-rounded candidate. So again, I don't work for them, but I think it is a great platform. And then, you know, I got to plug Robert Half. Our website has a ton of information, not only for job seekers, but for salary information too. Do you want to know where you sit salary-wise, or what should you be looking for, or how should you ask for a raise, or different things like that? We have a ton of free information, free trainers that we can provide to you. All you got to do is reach out and just introduce yourself to someone like myself or anyone else. We're a global company, so we will give you tons of information for free and put it out there. We partner with the Department of Labor, who looks at all of our placements domestically, and help create the salary guide to know what an entry-level person should expect in Springfield, Massachusetts, in Greenwich, Connecticut, and in Boise, Idaho, all for the same role, all for the same opportunity, all across different industries. So there's a lot of good resources and free information out there that we want to give to you. You just got to say hello. You got to do that little networking piece. And again, that's where LinkedIn can just bring so many people together, and then you can expand out to all this other free information that we have, and local colleges too. You know, I'll let you know. You all speak to that are at the universities, but I mean, always going back to the alumni directors and having conversations with them, and also, you know, job fairs and job coaches and everyone internally at the universities. And, you know, Justin, I know you can speak to that a lot better than I can. And Peggy and Betsy, you'd have some information on that, but colleges are a great resource. I mean, don't forget how many years we've been around, and how many alumni we speak to regularly.
I want to just kind of bounce on top of that about your alumni. I think when we talk about that online network, if you are not connected as a Springfield College alum to the Springfield College LinkedIn, you need to do that tonight. Like, there is an untapped group of people there. I can only recall maybe 3-4 times in, I don't want to say since 95, that I have gotten an outreach from somebody asking me for something specific, whether it was Rhode Island. I had there was somebody who was looking for housing because they had a clinical in this area, and I helped them find something. But there is like this really untapped group, and we are right there in one group, Springfield College alumni. So if you're not connected and using that ASAP, that's a great online network.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Peg. Great advice there as always. Our next question we have is, what aspects might help job applicants with becoming more competitive during the job search process?
Yeah, so Scott, we mentioned a couple already. So networking, having the ability to follow up, whether that's over the phone, through email in some capacities. But I think what it comes down to is more so your documents. So when you're submitting your resume, when you're submitting your cover letter, you want to ensure that you're speaking to your experiences and your accomplishments in a way that makes sense and separates you from the hundreds of other applicants that are applying for the same job. And when I continuously have conversations with either clients or students, I tell them to follow the CAR method. So understanding the challenge of your experience, the action in which you took to solve that challenge, and then the overall result. And remember to ensure that you're concise and that you're quantifying that experience. So whether that is the increase in percentage when you had a customer interaction, if you had experience in budget management, really getting into the numbers. That's going to set you apart from someone that is using generic bullet points. In addition to that, using your network to conduct not only outreach, let's say via LinkedIn or over the phone, but to set up informational interviews, to understand how those particular people got to those places and those positions and how they set up their network. And you really have to think about it as a multiple step approach and almost like a spider web. It's not going to be a single-sided highway that you're going on. You have to have multiple approaches, especially during this pandemic, to ensure that you are successful and that you are going to be, again, standing out amongst the competition to be competitive.
Thank you, Justin. And a note that just came into our queue is similar to this, so I'm going to pair this question up, and then maybe somebody else has another piece to add to this. And this question is, what can younger students do to set themselves up for job opportunities?
Well, I think, you know, one of the beautiful things about Springfield is the Humanics philosophy and the importance that's placed on volunteering your time and giving back. And, you know, as a nonprofit, obviously that's a question we ask about during our interviews. But more and more over the past decade or so, we are seeing that our mission partners who support us financially are also sending their staff to us to volunteer. So we have Day of Caring coming up, for example, which is a United Way tradition that goes on in most communities this time of year. And, you know, in an area like Worcester, it was kind of like the manufacturing companies, the insurance companies that could always be counted on to send people to things like that. And now it's grown so substantially. I mean, we have at one of our camps, Morgan Stanley has their own version of Day of Caring. So, you know, organizations are placing an importance on that, and they are giving their employees paid time off to go volunteer and do those things. So you might not yet have a lot of paid work experience, but trust me, you have a lot of work experience in the time that you volunteered and that you've given back, and you should highlight that to the same level that someone else would highlight it. I mean, and you never know what it can turn into. My daughter, when she was a young student at Springfield, she volunteered 2 summers in the PT department at the hospital here, and of course they asked her for a paid job, right? So, you know, it's just a natural progression. Sometimes it can turn into a paid job, or it can just give you more volunteer experience to bring to a position. But if you already have that volunteer experience, highlight it and don't be shy about it, because you're the kind of person organizations are looking for. And now more than ever, I think we realize the importance of what volunteer work does to bring a community together with everything the country is dealing with now. So brag on yourself.
I would add that you want to be prepared to have conversations of what you did during COVID-19. You don't want to be in the predicament where you said, I went to class and then I only watched Netflix all day. So use the ability, use this time, use technology to learn a new skill, whether that's enrolling in a free course, volunteering, as Betsy mentioned, and then also having the ability to answer that question. How did you maximize your time during this pandemic that has lasted a couple of months now? And be prepared to to present that answer.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Betsy. So our next question tonight is, which industry areas do you recommend job seekers research for continued employment opportunities?
Well, I believe that it really doesn't come down to any particular industry, right? All industries are hiring. They're all hiring. Some have been hit greater with the pandemic than others. But when you look at, you know, we're a global society, we're a global world. We learned that more as ever with this pandemic, just trying to get math, right? And the global connection of all the supply chain of that. Certainly, I would say that if you're interested in an industry, right, then you look at who are the top players of that industry. So if you're looking at pharmaceutical or healthcare, allied health, who are your top players in those particular industries, and do your research on that and go right to them, right? Or look at your networks. If you're in the business industry, you know, look at something like what Justin's doing, right? Because a lot of great opportunity comes from temp to hire. Huge, great opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity for you to test out something and for them to test you out and to see if that's a good fit for both of you. So, you know, thinking about, is there just one industry that's hot right now? No, but is in Springfield College, you've got healthcare, etc., PT, OT. Now, maybe you were an OT and you were thinking you wanted to get into OT in the school systems, and that's been kind of shut down. Well, pivot. Justin said earlier, you got to be able to pivot. So you might get there in a year or two, but in the meantime, where can you get some experience? Maybe you can get some experience in OT working in a special program that works with daycares. Maybe you can get some OT at a nursing home that's probably really needing it right now, rehab centers. So you want to be able to pivot. But overall, I don't know of any industry that isn't hiring at all, right? Most industries have some hiring going on. We're seeing the economy recover in bits and pieces from where it is. And it really comes down to all the things we said earlier, is how you're branding yourself, how you're marketing yourself, how you're networking. And if you're really truly interested in an industry, then you have to do the deep dive. You need to do those Google searches that Justin talked about earlier, where you're really looking at who are the professional associations with that industry? What kind of connections can I make with that particular industry? And you will get there. If you do the research and the effort and the deep dive, I guarantee you, you will get there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So what do you think are some new industries and new career paths that will forge due to the pandemic?
Yeah, great question. You know, I can't say it's a new industry, but what we are seeing survive and have one of the lowest unemployment rates is finance and accounting, only because a company needs those departments, right? So a little off basis with Springfield College, I know something a little different than what we do in a department that's certainly growing and being built out at Springfield. But the finance and accounting world, and again, that means a lot. I don't necessarily just mean your typical accountant or, you know, your analyst, but supply chain is moving more into that world as well. Logistics is moving more into that as well. So manufacturing, healthcare, we're starting to see a lot more. And there's a lot of need across the board in that industry, but more importantly, in those trades. And we are still seeing quite a bit of hiring across all levels, not just the entry level, but more importantly, also at a higher level, more senior level opportunities. So I would say, you know, you got to look at what's trending just in general. Technology is huge and growing, and has grown even stronger. I mean, look at what Zoom's stock has just done since this all has started, because everyone, you know, no one was ready. Most companies were not built to be remote. It was a wonderful concept, and everyone thought it would be great if I could have it. You know, these startups were the ones that were offering it, and so everyone wanted jobs there. But now we were forced as a nation to go remote. So tech became huge, right? Who was going to set up those networks? How were they going to do it? Tech teams weren't necessarily large enough to do that. And for smaller companies, you know, they had to outsource that. So the entire tech world, from, you know, your simple data analyst up to your coders have become huge and much in demand and in need industries. And you can almost kind of choose your own adventure from being internal or being a consultant in that world. And then, you know, in healthcare, very much the same. Home health aides, I know it isn't necessarily, you know, sounds a little odd since everyone's kind of being apart, but COVID has brought people into their homes. So the healthcare industry, the home health aides, you know, there is no, for PT practices were all closed for the longest time. So what were they doing? They were getting creative, and people were going to people's homes and being safe and doing whatever they could to take precautions to do that. So again, those fields that are Springfield strong are starting to see an uptick, as cities open up more and we get into phase 2s and 3s for everything, and you can go back into the workplace. But that at-home healthcare space has really grown and really started to become something, you know, major. But you know, those are, you know, it's tech, it's finance, accounting, it's manufacturing. It's a lot of those, I guess, what you know, you don't think of them necessarily as essential, but then something like this happens and you realize, well, there's a toilet paper shortage. Like, what am I supposed to do there? So that's where, like, the logistics and the trucking industry became this amazing thing. And you just never knew how much went into just literally stocking stores with toilet paper and paper towels and, you know, and then meats and all of that. And so I would look into the supply chain roles and all of that as really growing industries that are going to be robust and turn into just more than what people typically thought that they were. And they're really going to become analytical opportunities that are going to become high paying jobs. You know, and then renewable energy, you know, so much of what's going on right now is to reduce costs, especially in COVID. They don't want to lay people off anymore. So how do we reduce our internal costs? So renewable energy is becoming a very big thing for larger firms. You know, what can we do about our lights? What can we do about how we bring our energy in? You know, those types of energies, those types of industries, we're starting to see a really large uptick in need across the board. Multiple jobs, not even just, again, one specific area, but anything in that field, you know, engineers, all of that are just really, we're starting to see a lot more. And then, you know, my wife's a therapist, and Betsy, you had mentioned social workers, but social worker right now, you know, people are struggling. You know, we're wearing masks. We're not seeing people smile anymore. We're not getting that human interaction. So my wife's practice is booming. She's seeing everyone virtually, but big need for social workers and licensed counselors and crisis workers. Major uptick in need there just to support your neighbor, you know, and you're so, you know, again, lots of opportunity right now. You know, you keep seeing these big unemployment numbers, but I promise you there's lots of opportunity out there right now. And it's, again, goes back to Springfield College, that humanics piece to it. That's where we're seeing a very large uptick, is helping your fellow neighbor, helping your fellow human. And those industries are hiring right now, and they can't hire fast enough. You know, they can't find the bodies. The budgets are there.
Great. Anybody else want to add anything to that? Thank you for that.
Spot on.
Go ahead, Betsy.
I was just going to say he was spot on, you know. I mean, you know, things have changed, and we, you know, COVID caused a lot of regulations for us at camp to change. So we had, you know, full-time nurses at camps, you know, and people that we had to hire that we wouldn't normally be hiring. So, you know, don't be afraid to look at other opportunities and try a different industry. And, you know, Justin is a perfect example of that at Robert Half, because, you know, if this is your first time looking for a job, utilize someone like him. And we're customers of Robert Half, not Justin's, because we're in a different geographical area. But, you know, we have right now an amazing accountant who came to us during the holidays of last year. So if you're not sure where to go, someone like Justin is a great person for you to talk to, because he can kind of not only guide you to help you find a job, but point you, and someone like that has connections in the industries that might interest you where you might not necessarily have connections. So, you know, feel free to utilize a service like that to your advantage, because it's a win for Robert Half, it's a win for you.
Excellent. So this next question that came into the queue says, how valuable is creativity when looking for a job? So creativity. And the second part of that says, are employers looking for someone who stands out or just fits in?
I love this question. I teach creativity. So I think any organization is valuing creativity. What we really are looking for is people who can think out of the box, people who bring something unique to the table, who come and think, gee, I'm looking at this, and in a fresh eyes, I see it, boom, like that. So creativity is huge. And here's the thing. You are a Springfield College grad who has probably participated in athletics, whether it was formal or informal. And you use a significant amount of creativity in your athleticism. So whether that is, you know, on the field or off the field, or you are arts and performance or whatever you might have done, and you can tap into that. You can really sell that. You know, innovation is a very popular term right now, right? You know, how are you innovative? What have you done that is innovative lately? You should think about that. If that's not somewhere in your cover letter or on your LinkedIn profile, it should be. It should be a part of that. What have you maybe done that was innovative, that you had an idea, whether it was in school, whether it was with a part-time job, whether it was in leadership, whether it was in a volunteer position, that you did something that saved the company money, saved the company time, resulted in some type of innovation. So yes, the answer is yes. Companies are looking for creative people. Never undersell your creativity. Never conform to just say, oh, I'm just going to fit in. Nope, because that you'll never be happy. So go for the creativity.
Thank you, Peg. What tools, either online and or offline, can job seekers use to identify top strengths and skills, etc.?
Yeah, Scott. So there's many tools out there that anyone could use to identify their personality types, their top strengths. One of them is Career One Stop in terms of a personality assessment that they could take in addition to Myers-Briggs as another one, using Holland's Code Career Tests as another one. These are also either at a small fee or potentially free, depending on your Google search, available to understand your top strengths. What I do tell clients and students is that these assessment tests are going to help you in understanding these larger umbrella ideas, but it's up to you to take the test much further in terms of your sense of reflection on your experiences, and for you to pick up on themes that are either woven throughout your curriculum, your time at Springfield College, and or through your experiences and your skills and strengths. So I think it's a multifaceted approach where not only are you taking the assessment, but then you're reflecting actively. And that could be with a pen and paper, outlining some of your previous experiences and picking up on similar themes, whether that's leadership, active communication, and or budget or finance, to really understand where your top strengths land. And then you have the ability then to articulate that in a resume, a cover letter, and an interview.
Excellent. Any other pieces of advice?
I was, and I agree with all that, and then like the tools and the certificates too. Excel trainers, little things like that. Those little courses you can take depending that are relative to your industry. There are little certificates, like Justin said, for small fees and or free online. Just again, little things you can put on, like Peg was saying, that LinkedIn has all these different badges you can get. They can also go on your resume as well. I'm Excel certified, or I'm CPA certified if it's relevant for this, or I have this license or whatnot. Little things, again, smaller fees, but just might separate you just that little bit from the next person.
Excellent. So our next question is in the area of career changes. It says, if an individual finds themselves in need of a career change, what might you recommend they do to boost their skills and highlight transferable skills?
So we've said a lot of different things, right? Networking, but there are a lot of free resources out there to boost your skills and to highlight them. Justin said, hey, you can find out what your strengths are. I'm going to flip that and say, well, what are your weaknesses, right? And so if you understand what your weaknesses are, you might think about, well, maybe I need to take a course in budget and planning. Here I was, a PE major. I am really great at all this PE stuff, but I don't have a clue about budget and finance. Well, if I'm ever going to be an athletic director or anything to that, this would be a good time to start thinking about taking the class. So there are online free courses, Coursera, all types of free courses you can take. And at the end of the day, with these courses, you now have a competency, right? And so we talk about, it's not so much of being book smart as having competencies. So now maybe can you take that competency and apply it to something? So do you volunteer to be the treasurer of a local nonprofit organization? Do you volunteer to help the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts of America in some capacity, right? So how do you build upon that? And I will say to you that any volunteer or leadership role you take on in your life, one, it adds to your network. You will have a bigger network than you ever had before. And two, it grows your skills. And many of us on this panel have pivoted in our own careers, not necessarily always based on the book smarts, but on other skills that we transformed in other processes that we did. So, getting these free courses is a great way to do it. Building the badges, We already talked about credentialing like Microsoft and other credentials that are out there. There's project manager credentials. There's all kinds of different credentials on wherever you want to go to do that career change. We have not mentioned this, but one of the things that we should mention is a website called bls.gov, and that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. And on that website is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And so if you're really wanting deep dive into a particular occupation, get some good knowledge base on that, you could look that up and it would tell you what the average rate of hire is, what's the lower income, what's the higher income, what are the certifications needed to function in that field, what are some of the major organizations that support that field, and that would help you kind of pivot as you were kind of trying to figure out a different career change, that you wanted to do something different. Most of the time when we change careers, it's not that we're changing everything we're doing. We're usually taking pieces of what we did and what we liked, and we're re-engineering them, we're reimagining them into a new opportunity. So that's what I would say, start there. There's so many different opportunities for you to explore.
Excellent. How can you use volunteer work to develop your professional network?
You know, we've talked a lot about highlighting your volunteer experience on your resume, you know, seeking out companies who put a high priority on their employees volunteering. One thing we didn't really touch on was, you know, the places you've already volunteered at. Just because that wasn't a paid job doesn't mean those people shouldn't be your references. They can sometimes be your greatest references. We hired a fresh out of college, fresh out of a, you know, 4+1 MBA program, not at Springfield, although he could have been a triangle. He wasn't a triangle, but he could have been. You know, a young person, it was his first full-time job, and out of the blue, I got an email from, he had volunteered at a Y many, many years ago in his hometown. You know, in the Y world, we know a lot of people, but this happened to be somebody I had never met, and I didn't know anybody from that Y. But just receiving this unsolicited email that said, hey, I know this young person, and he was much younger even when he volunteered here, but I can vouch for him. And, you know, in this case, he already was the top candidate, but if there had been, you know, two people neck and neck, this would have been, you know, a little bit of advantage for him. So, you know, I know right now it's not exactly the call someone out of the blue and ask them for a cup of coffee kind of time, but, you know, we're not really hanging out at Panera and those kind of places, but call someone and ask them to hop on a Zoom with you. And, you know, what contacts do they have? Look at their, you know, maybe you haven't volunteered there in 2 or 3 years, but go back and look at that person's LinkedIn profile and see who they are connected to, and ask them if they can help you get connected to a business that interests you, an industry, a specific person at a business that they have a connection with. You know, those are the kind of phone calls that, and you know, I don't want to speak for everybody else on the panel, but I'm sure they would agree with me. If someone who volunteered with them in youth sports or at their organization popped up a year or two later and asked for help, I guarantee you everybody on this panel that'd be a phone call that no matter how busy we were, we found the time to return. So, you know, think of those people as connections just as much as the people who you know from the paid positions that you've had.
Excellent. How do people create their own brand new opportunities during COVID-19?
Yeah, so Scott, as we mentioned before, networking, having the ability to communicate with others, but I'm going to take it a step further. So after you have made the outreach, you started the conversation with either the employer, the volunteer organization, you want to come up with a plan. So not only do you want to introduce yourself, but you want to have your research done about the organization. You want to have the ability to paint the picture and come up with the direct plan of how you're going to assist the employer, the organization, and what you're going to actually contribute in terms of a value add. So that might be that you have a specific skill set and that you are very interested in conducting research that might benefit that particular organization. So that could be how to address technology during COVID and how the organization can then adopt and apply that research in their daily practices. So not only are you creating and expanding your network, you're setting up an opportunity for yourself, but you are that leader of that project or that initiative to not only gain experience with that organization, employer, volunteer organization, but then take it a step further in establishing that project and becoming a leader in that particular area.
Excellent.
I'm going to add to that, Scott, a little bit. I want to talk about their own entrepreneurial spirit too. So, you know, you can create your own jobs, right? So as a Springfield College alum, many of you are exercise science and in a variety of different recreational therapy. There is actually a niche market right now, right, for some after school virtual programming that is well needed across the country to get kids out. Something fun, exciting, because they've been behind so much screen time. I have 4 kids, it's crazy. So, you know, you can be creative and create something and be innovative and using YouTube and marketing and get people behind it. And then when you went to a company, like let's say you go to Betsy at some point and you want to get hired by the Y and you show her, gee, I did all these virtual Pilates and blah, 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 blah. And Betsy's like, oh, you're my person. I mean, you know, so that is another thing. Don't be afraid. You are young. Most of you on this are young. And this is the time to take risks, right? This is the time that you can take those risks. So don't be afraid to try something. Just try it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peg. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Justin. Just being mindful of the time that we have left here tonight, we have some good questions still remaining here that were posed, so I'm going to try to get through as many of them as we can and merge a few of these questions together that have some resemblance. So the next one that we have here is, should job seekers during a pandemic acknowledge the crisis, the pandemic crisis in a job application, and why or why not?
I don't know how you don't acknowledge it, right? This is, we live in a whole different world right now, and we're all living it. So yes, acknowledge it. And in particular, if you found the time to do something amazing or creative with your time, I mean, we have a volunteer here at the Y, and his son has also volunteered with us, and a high school student. And in March, he started his own YouTube channel, and he has released an album. Like, I went online and purchased, I didn't even know you could buy an album anymore online, but it has a cover and everything. And he has cover songs, but he has some of his own material. And, you know, he's a high school student, he's a junior, but he's intending hopefully to go to music school. So absolutely, like he was not, you know, Justin, you said earlier, something about, you know, after classes going and watching Netflix for the afternoon and probably eating ice cream or something. This kid was not doing that. So he needs to share that with people and be proud of what he accomplished. There are a lot of people doing really interesting and creative things over these past several months, or like Peggy said, you know, coming up with a new platform in how to deliver their services, you know, share that with people. But yeah, I don't think there's any way that we can't be honest about the fact that we're living in this time. So
yeah, I get to cheat and sit on them. Now that I set up these virtual interviews, if I set them up for my clients, I actually sit in on them. You know, I hide in a corner. No one sees that I'm on there, but I sit and I hear what's being asked. And one of my candidates asked the other week, and I thought it was great to kind of address what's going on in COVID. But he said, what's one thing, to the 2 interviews, what's one thing that you've done now that you're home so much more, you know, hobby-wise, or something that you've taken on that maybe you didn't get to because you spent so much time at work? You know, we spent 80% of our lives at work, and now we're all home so much more. So we asked him, you know, what's one thing that you get to do now that you didn't get to do pre-COVID? And he said, I'll start. He goes, I started to garden. He goes, I'm a terrible gardener, but I started to garden. He's like, I wanted to see what I could do. And they loved the question. They absolutely loved it. And it made it less of an interview and more conversational, but it was great. It acknowledged what's going on right now and turned it into something else to give him some ammunition and some info to know more about the interviewers, which he used later on in the process. And I thought it was just a great question, and an icebreaker almost. Just really just set a tone, open it up, And the rest of the interview, it was no longer an interview. It was 3 people having a conversation. It was
Fabulous.
yeah, it was wonderful. I loved it. And I would never have thought of that, and not in my life.
So what advice do you have for job seekers who may be uncomfortable with a virtual interview?
Great question. Beyond get comfortable because it's the new normal. I mean, no. So we'll be sharing a guide with you, but we put out a great virtual interview, like how-to guide at Robert Half, and there's a few things. One, test your technology. Some of the most reasons why you're most uncomfortable is you're sitting on a phone and you're staring at a screen and you're like, do I have it right? You know what I mean? Not everyone has the cameras on there, whatever it is. So test the technology before. If it's a FaceTime, listen, just FaceTime with someone and say, how's my lighting? How does this look? What do I do? So little things like that can go a long way. Change it up and have a backup. Again, if the phone's not working, have a laptop. Laptop's not working, have the phone at the ready. If it's not charged, get the charge. Just try and think ahead. Be prepared for the things that can go wrong. Think about it. When you leave to drive to an interview, you leave extra early because there could be traffic, there could be an accident, there could be anything. Well, just because you're at home, don't get comfortable. Who knows what's going to go on with the internet? There's so many other things that we're trusting now that are out of our control that it hasn't changed. So, you think like I'm at home and I'm doing the weatherman and I got my suit up top and my shorts on the bottom, but you don't know where the camera is and you have no idea. And it's like, there you are, you're caught. So it's like, it's just little random things that you need to think about. Like I still say dress for success, suit up, even though, you might see someone else on the other side as casual. You're setting that tone. You're letting them know where you're at and how seriously you're taking this and how you would approach it from your house. Distraction-free locations. Be organized and well prepared. Know your resume. I don't care if it's in person or if it's virtual. Just remember to look at your resume. I made the critical mistake of never updating my resume for 9 years, and then I wanted to do a career transition. What was I supposed to do? So once a month, take a look at your resume and think, what have I accomplished in this last month? Maybe there's a bullet point there to add. Maybe there's not. But when you're ready or when you send it out, all of a sudden, it's up to date. And I promise you, 30 minutes once a month, and your resume is ready to go at a moment's notice, especially when networking is so important. People are going to ask for that. And, just treat the interview like it's an in-person interview. Maintain good eye contact. What does that mean? Look into the camera. Don't look at the person who's speaking, but look into the camera when you're talking, because that's what they see. That's them. You looking at them is by looking into the camera. And then when they're talking, you can look at what they have to say at the box and all of that. And definitely, I know we talked about it, but share your appreciation. It's difficult for everyone. Not everyone's comfortable doing this. So make them feel as comfortable and ask questions. You make sure that you come with your own questions. You don't want to just go through and answer what they have to say, but ask questions. They have to like you, but you have to like them. It's a very important decision that you're making in your life when you're taking this job or you're making that transition. And people forget that. And again, 80% of our days are spent with our coworkers, not at in typical times, not at home with our families. And as we phase in and we're doing more, make sure the culture is the right fit for you and you get a good feel for that, and ask questions about culture, because that's really important to hiring managers now. Is how are you going to fit in the team? How do you interact and what do you do? Because now virtually and onboarding you that way, are you going to ask a question? How would you ask the question? How would you go and get that information? It's different than knocking on the office next door or in an open floor plan, shouting across a room. You can't just get information now. You got to be a little bit more creative.
So
I would also,
go ahead, Justin.
sorry about that.
No.
I would also add to be transparent in your capacity, and or let's say your laptop broke and you have the interview tomorrow. Ensure to be communicative with the hiring person so they understand, something went wrong, let's pivot, let's change the platform, let's change the method and delivery of the interview so that they know that you're just not flaking or that, you overslept and missed the interview time. So I think in having active and great communication skills, you'll have the ability to ensure that your brand is, intact if something bad does occur in terms of, technology failure.
Excellent. Thank you again to both the Justins. Solid advice there. We're coming up about quarter of, so we have maybe time for 2, maybe 3 more questions. So I'm going to merge a couple of these together. One of the questions was, what should job seekers know about hiring freezes? Fits into the other question, which is, if a job seeker's dream company is on a hiring freeze, how might they stay connected?
So,
I don't think there's, oh, I'm sorry, Peg.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to the first part of that question, I don't think there's ever harm in reaching out to a company unless, like I said, it blatantly says on their website, or back in the old days, there would be a sign on the door saying, no solicitation, don't walk in, that kind of thing. But unless it says that, reach out. And, we need to remember too that sometimes hiring freezes might be impacting a company, but not necessarily every division of that company, not necessarily every location within that company. So while they might not, need help in their manufacturing division, Justin talked earlier about the logistics end of things. So maybe they need more truck drivers, maybe they need more logistics and supply chain people, but they're all caught up on their manufacturing end, or they need quality engineers or whatever it is that they need. So don't take one little thing and somehow make it out to be a scenario where there's never an opportunity for you. And I think, you just, if you get a message from somebody that says, in a somewhat polite way, just don't contact us again, don't take that personally. They could be having a bad day too. This is a crazy, crazy time. But I think, there's no harm in reaching out. I mean, we were open at the beginning. The Y was open for emergency childcare. So obviously you could not come in and exercise or do any of those things. And even though everyone in the area knew that, I got many, many emails and, messages through our Facebook page or messages through our website that people were interested in jobs. And to me, that's the kind of person you want. Like, we're not open, but yet you want to be kind of first in line when we do reopen. That's who you want to be.
I'm going to expand on that because I also think that if it's a company you're really, really interested in, you can have the conversation of saying, do you have an idea of when you think that hiring freeze might be lifted, right? I also ask them is, well, are you working with any contractors? A great way in the door with a company is through a contractor. So if it's a big company, they may have a hiring freeze because they do not want those jobs on the books, but that doesn't mean that they still don't have a need to fill jobs. And that's where Justin's company comes into play. So they have, go out and they get these contracts and then go out and I want temporary employees. Again, to that. If you're in the process of interviewing with a company and all of a sudden they say, we really liked you, but now we're a hiring freeze, you could kind of say, well, gee, can I go to part-time versus full-time? Is there an opportunity there for me to just get my foot in the door? I think the theme has been patience, upfront honesty, strong, good communication, and looking at other avenues. There's not just one way of getting in.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Peg. So our final question or two, based on time, will be these two. And it is, what should job seekers know about the impact of an open mindset versus a closed mindset?
So I think the open mindset is going to allow you to see multiple opportunities that you would have not normally seen. So I often tell, clients or students that, a psychology major doesn't necessarily equal a psychologist, that there's an entire industry or field that you could be tapping into. And you need to use this time to actively search these job boards, network appropriately to understand, okay, now that I've majored in psychology, I can then either continue my education, let's say go on to get my social work degree, and or potentially look at a different field completely, whether that be education, accounting later on with additional skills. But having an open mindset will allow you to see kind of the larger picture in a sense, rather than, saying, all I wanted to do in my entire life was to become a psychologist. And because COVID happened, I'm not sure if that will be a possibility. So I think with the open mindset, you'll have the ability to think outside the box, use creativity, as we've mentioned before, and it'll also grant you grace and patience during your search process, and really understand that you'll have the ability to pivot when necessary. And then just a closed mindset doesn't necessarily allow you to use that innovation and creativity, and really won't establish patience overall.
Excellent.
Google Carol Dweck. If you want to learn more about mindset and being prepared and for a question around mindsets, open mindsets, closed mindsets, growth mindsets, Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, is the guru of it. You'll be well informed and really prepared for an answer on that one.
Thank you, Peg. Thank you, Justin. And I think this last question will wrap up our questions. And I think this is a perfect one to close off on. And it is, despite the pandemic that has happened, what is one good thing that you are seeing in the job market and in your particular industry?
Wow.
So we'll look at all industries. Well, let's look at job report numbers that are coming out. We're seeing unemployment rates drop. Okay. That is most important, which means industries are starting to hire again. This hit everyone hard and fast. So everyone had to strategize and figure things out and just say stop. And now they're starting to realize, twofold. One, they're getting into Q4, and all that. And this hit in the middle of Q2. And then Q3 was planning and figuring out what's going on. And then as Q4 comes around the corner and is going to hit us soon, there's still budgets that people need to spend. And if they want to increase that budget for next year, they need to hire now. So what was a very large temp to hire or a temp boom in March and April, where companies, like Peggy was saying, needed those contractors to come in because they couldn't have anyone on their books. So they used firms who were paying the employees. Now they can bring people onto their books because they need to spend the money because they did all these cost reductions and maybe their business got hurt. But, there's a lot of industries that are strong and that are doing well, in the outdoor sporting world. Like one of my clients is Dorel and cycling sports, and they're booming right now. Bikes are selling like crazy, but shoes and apparel aren't necessarily, because no one wants to try anything on anymore. No one can go to a store or do anything. So we talk about being virtual. I mean, look at, look at the spin classes that are going on and the bikes and the mirror workouts, and everything is turning into this virtual world, and where are those industries going? So as we see the unemployment rates start to drop, we're going to see across all industries, really the floodgates start to open. And on top of that, unemployment benefits, that extra kickback, is going away. And some states are giving a little bit of incentive. But be the one, 1 in 9 people were waiting because they were getting the extra paycheck. So 1 in 9 people were not actively looking for the job. So be the one. It's still down to like 1 in 6 people are looking. A lot of people are still remaining on unemployment because they're getting an extra, maybe not 600, but 200 or 300, depending on what your state is doing. So be the one that wants to get the job now and wants to get your foot in the door. And use internships as ways to do that as well, especially if you don't have as much experience or you're looking for an entry-level role. Use an internship as a way to get into the door. I know it sounds like it's free. More internships are starting to pay because honestly, it's cheaper for them, and they can pay by the hour and they can budget for that, and then they can turn that into a permanent job once they lift the hiring freeze. So they're bringing in the talent, they're training you up as an intern, and then they're hiring you because you're ready to go into as a permanent employee. I really think Q4 is going to pick up because we're starting to see a tremendous September, and we're seeing month after month growth across multiple industries. I can't even target a specific industry at this time because of the growth that we're starting to see and the numbers that we're starting to see drop. So it's an exciting time. Don't be discouraged. Start getting excited. Start getting yourself out there. Start the networking, because again, finance, you're going to see those that have to deal with the budget need to spend their money. And that doesn't only mean finance, and it doesn't mean only accounting. There's a budgeting on the logistics side. There's a budgeting for the supply chain. There's a budget at the YMCA in every single department. And if you spend it, they might get it back, depending on what you do. And they're starting to spend now. And I really think we're going to see more and more. And I hate to say it, but after the election, a lot is going to change too. I think some people are hesitant to do some things right now with what's going on in the government. But I think once we're past it, whatever happens, companies are just going to start going and doing more. And we're seeing what's nice is more brought domestically here. We're not seeing as much outsourced internationally. It's being brought back domestically. And especially, I'm in the tri-state area. We're seeing, especially, for New York City, offices opening smaller remote sister offices so people don't have to commute as far. So, we went from this pre-COVID open office floor plans. You have to have it open. Everyone needs to be able to communicate. Don't go to a private office. It's horrible. Well, guess what? You can't do that anymore. You can't have this open office floor plan and these trade floors for everything. So they've got to figure out something different. And in that, there's a ton of opportunity.
I want to piggyback on that too. So what really great came out of it is we're a user economy now, right? So we didn't realize that we needed our groceries delivered to our house and our Pilates on Zoom and home care in the home, and I can go on and on. And so those positive things are, you are a generation that can embrace those technologies. You've grown up in the technology world. So you can embrace how the economy is changing into this real focus of innovation is how do you use it? How do you use the different inventions to going a long way? And we'll take the example you were saying about bicycles, kayaks this year. If you went to try to buy a kayak, you could barely get a kayak. I'm a kayaker, I have a kayak. If you are a rec therapy person or, an exercise science person and you're trying to find a job, think about the outdoor industry of selling products at REI or whatever as a pivot for a temporary thing. So there are a lot of real positives, I think, in some ways that COVID made us all stop. It made the world come to a stop. And most importantly, in the American society, our busy society come to a stop. And we focused in on, oh my God, what are the basic needs that I have? And then how do I get them to me? And I don't think that's going to change. I really think we're going to tap into that. And things like, delivery of food services and all these other things and telehealth, I think they're here to stay.
And, Justin's point about the internships kind of reminded me of a good book that I'll give a shout out to. There's a podcaster named Ken Coleman who has a book called The Proximity Principle. And he basically reinvented his career as a grown man. I think he had children and, wasn't somebody that was like fresh out of school or anything. And he took an internship somewhere and he couldn't get in the door. He went and said, I'll work for free. He wanted to get into broadcasting, and he just did it so persistently that eventually they let him in and he learned the skills he needed, and it changed his whole trajectory. So don't be intimidated by an internship. And he worked it around his full-time job. So he kept his job. He did kind of this on the side. And not only did he get the job that he wanted, but he wrote a pretty interesting book about it too. So I'm sure there's some royalties coming in there, but just be open to things that you might not really be thinking of, because it might not be the ideal next step that you wanted to take.
I would agree. I think that you have to shoot your shot, especially for things that you're really passionate about. For example, I did a job search in July. I started at a new institution during COVID, so it is possible to not only achieve what you want, but set forward a new path. So I think, you know, if anything from this webinar, go with grace, patience, and then go after what you really want with creativity and innovation.
Great advice to wrap up our final question. Thank you all. So everyone, we have reached the end of our webinar here tonight, and I want to take this time to sincerely thank all of our panelists for their outstanding job this evening and for volunteering their time to provide our viewing audience with some solid, expert, and professional career advice during this pandemic. So thank you so much, Peg, Justin, Betsy, and Justin. And before we sign off this evening, I would also like to sincerely thank Tammy Cades-Lucy, Director of Alumni Relations, and also Maria D'Agostino Crawford, our Associate Director of Alumni Relations, for leading and managing this program. I would also like to thank two additional individuals who are behind the scenes, ensuring that all of our technology needs were well taken care of. And those two individuals are Damon Markowitz, who is our Associate Director for Media Relations in the Office of Communications here at the college, and also Tony Muti, our Chief Information Officer in Information and Technology Services. And lastly, we'd all like to thank our valued students and alumni for joining us here tonight. So on behalf of our panelists and all of us here tonight, thank you. Have a great evening and good night.